Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday, so that means I'm welcoming you to another episode of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, here on the Coalition Radio Network. I'm your host, Chaz Calenda, an attorney at the law firm of Inman and Torgy in Coventry, Rhode Island. And as usual, I'll be hosting tonight's show, and most importantly, I'll be keeping the law above politics. And as you know, we've been following statewide and national issues and legal topics here on the shows, and tonight will be no different. My guest here tonight is Coalition Radio host and station management, Pat Ford.
Hey.
Pat joins me tonight. Hey, Pat, how are you? Pat joins me tonight.
Defrosting still, and it's not even that cold yet. Holy cow.
Oh man, not even that cold. I don't know. That I was freezing out there, and that was midday. I don't know what you were doing out there in the middle of the night.
Well, you know, for folks who haven't had a chance to catch up with us yet, the Matt Brown gubernatorial campaign has decided to take the homeless situation very seriously and personally. They have, I don't think they're calling it this yet, but they've set up an encampment at the State House. You drive by now, and if you drive by during the day today, you would have seen a half a dozen tents, which during the day are sort of, I would say, inhabited loosely. And then at 5 o'clock, the real works begins as the sun sets and the gentle sea breeze waves over from Narragansett Bay, if you will, across the plains of Rhode Island, bringing with it a serious case of the chills. Now, probably TMI, but I guess it's official tonight. I will start having to wearing socks now for the next 3 or 4 months because I don't. But you know, it's a critical issue. Regardless of where you are, and I saw your post, Chaz, and I think you nailed it, or your reflection on my post we shared on the Coalition Facebook page at facebook.com/Coalition Radio, a post of some of the speechifying. But the critical part here is that we have our brothers and sisters, our mothers, our fathers here in Rhode Island. There is a measurable percentage of them, and a growing percentage of them, that are sleeping on the streets tonight.
It's true. And it's something that we as people, we as Rhode Islanders, anywhere in the country, in the world, really, if we have the means to do something about it, we should be. And my understanding is we have something like $1.3 billion worth of federal funds that the state can basically use to do something about that. We wouldn't need nearly all of that to try to at least put these people in some sort of shelter while the temperatures dip below freezing. And I just think as human beings, we should be looking at ways we could do that at this point.
We're celebrating the holidays, the high holy days, any one of a number of religious observances over the next few weeks. And we will get, as we've done now for years, get an ample amount of, what's the word of the year, virtue signaling, from all the poobahs on high. And it is incomprehensible how we could allow people to live in the conditions they're living in right now. I understand, and I think, Chaz, I'll speak for you for just this one time, that we both agree that it is a difficult subject. The solutions are challenging in the long run. We all know that just simply throwing money at it won't fix everything, but again, there is absolutely no excuse in the year 2021, particularly with the health threat that the pandemic presents, regardless of how you feel about it. I think we all agree it's a serious disease whose situation of which is exacerbated if we're having people live in grotesquely unsafe, unhygienic means in probably close quarters with people barely known to each other, who are simply looking for warmth and not worrying about whether or not they're sharing something unknown, unseen. It's disgusting that we're sitting on all that money and there seems to be no sense of urgency to provide at least a fix to the immediate crisis, which is we all agree on, just get people off the streets. I had the opportunity this morning to spend quality time with the governor during the COVID press conference. And I got to ask him two things. Well, three things. One of which was directly related to COVID. But for purposes of this conversation right now, I asked him yet another big housing fix with lots of money and lots of this and that attached to perhaps a long-term situational fix for months and years from now. I asked him two very simple questions, for which I'm still awaiting an answer. Would that proposal have in fact been generated if Matt Brown and Senator Mendez had not spent the night sleeping in front of the State House? And while I'm thrilled to listen to yet another pitch about this housing, that housing, these proposals, we've got this funding coming up, what are we going to do to put people in a safe, warm position for this weekend? I'll just forget about the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. How about just we fix this weekend? Chaz, listen, you've been part of the criminal justice system for 12 years. You've seen virtually every aspect of challenged lives imaginable and some unimaginable. But do you think with everything you've seen, we have the resources here to get the possibly thousands of Rhode Islanders out of the cold? Do you think we should be able to manage that?
I certainly think we should be able to manage it, and considering the number of dollars that we have at our disposal at this point. And again, I'm not one for throwing money away, wasting money. I don't think this is a waste of money. This is a situation where we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about people's safety. We're talking about people who may be in an element that is going to put them in severe danger. I know it's hard to argue the point after we've had decades upon decades of wasteful spending here in Rhode Island of taxpayer money, that we can now all of a sudden do something about it, but we can. There are buildings in this state that could be taken over, or at least paid for, rented, whatever you have it, to put people inside when temperatures reach this level. Why aren't we doing something like that? That's a simple question. I think your questions were fair to the governor. I think his non-answers are continuing a pattern of feeling of unaccountability to the people who he allegedly serves. I don't agree with Matt Brown on much, if you're going to ask me politically, but I at least will give him credit for bringing this issue to the forefront, so somebody can hopefully address it. Somebody's got to be doing it.
Right. I'll be heading out there for full disclosure later on in the evening after the cavalcade of stars that we have on Wednesdays to do a little reconnoitering. The situation does peripherally bring up a subject of the law. Yesterday, and if you go to facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, you'll see the video that we took. Capitol Police, we're there, Johnny on the spot, and I generally speak and think highly of them because I've seen a number of them work overtime in a sense to ensure both the continuation and the safety of a number of protests. Last night was kind of a departure from that, and it's quite disturbing, to tell you the truth. Last night, Capitol policemen, when they saw the setup that was taking place, approached, and I was there. This is firsthand. Myself and a gentleman by the name of Steve Alquist were there from the get-go, and we were there tonight, and we watched the network show up for their obligatory 30-second spots and cut their B-roll so that they could pretend who's the Will Ferrell character, right? So that they Ron Burgundy, so that they can pose Ron Burgundy style, like they're on the scene, caring for Rhode Islanders. Our fill in the blanks team is ready to go.
A classic.
Yeah, absolutely. So they were there for the obligatory couple of minutes, and then did what they usually do, which is go somewhere cozy and warm. Channel 10's truck were there, by the way. They appeared to get out a couple of times, and then they went back inside. It might be one of their union regulations. But anyway, the Capitol Police alleged that there was a policy, and anyone who's watched the Coalition Radio Network for any period of time knows how much I love the word policy, because I will guarantee you one thing, Chaz Calenda, if you come up with a policy, I'll come up with one too. And you'll come up with a counter policy, and I have full respect for policies that I'm perfectly willing to make up on the fly. So your reporter engaged in a little witty repartee and a little back and forth. I reminded them at one point that the First Amendment, the right to peaceful protest at government installations, did not operate on a time clock. So no, you don't have to go home at 7 o'clock at night. Amazingly enough, and they were ready to call the state police, and they were drawing allegations of a peaceful protest to your ability to camp at a state camping spot. Holy cow. Looks like someone missed a civics bandwagon. Okay.
Do we teach civics anymore?
We actually do as of now, but we'll see whose civics they're teaching. But there they were. They called the Stadies on these people. The Stadies show up, and after a quiet conversation, some of which we caught on tape, which again, you can find at our Facebook page, the state police acknowledged, in fact, that this was a peaceful protest and said, have a good night. And left both two groups of people a little slackjaw, as they say. The acknowledgement by the state police to the folks with the Rhode Island Political Co-op, who is the overall organization, because there are other candidates there. Harrison Tuttle is there. Alex Kithis from Woonsocket is there, amongst others. And but left holding the proverbial bag was the Capitol Police, who found out that no policies, you can't, you don't get to play make up a policy.
You can't override the Constitution with
Yeah. Now, this is where it becomes even sketchier, though, and that's why we're going back tonight. Twice during the middle of the night, where now imagine this, people are sleeping in the rough. Well, they've got tents, and I'm sure they've got nice sleeping bags. But still, the spirit is there. The gesture is there, and it's a pretty strong gesture. They were woken up twice to make sure that they were okay. Excuse me, because that's policy too. So the Capitol Police are still at work, hard at work, making up policy. Just so we're all clear, and the creative forces are there at will to make up even more policy. So,
well, Pat, the Capitol Police generally don't make policy. Do you know who the Capitol Police report to?
The state police, don't they?
That is correct.
Ding, 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 ding.
There must. Yes, you win the prize, and I'm not sure if the left hand isn't talking to the right hand or whatever's going on over there. But I'm very pleased to hear the Capitol Police, not the Capitol Police, the state police have finally recognized that peaceful protests in public area, whether that be the State House, the side of a road, or whatever it is protected under the First Amendment. I'm very pleased to hear that.
Right. Now, we're going to make sure that tonight, if we have to bring our little mini constitutions, that we're going to have a conversation with the Capitol Police if, in fact, they interfere with these people's sleep. Although, as one intrepid camper, if you will, pointed out that this is not unlike the situation that many of the homeless find themselves in, where they're constantly being rousted, checked on by law enforcement who are ignorant, if you will, of the reasons why these people are there. I have yet to meet someone who's living on the streets who woke up that morning and said, you know what, screw the condo, I'm going to do me some urban camping. Doesn't happen. And this doesn't even speak to the amount of people who are, as the saying goes, couch surfing. One need only drive by a number of parking lots in the state. And I'm not going to say where, because I don't want these people being tortured, if you will, by local police. But one need only go through a number of commuter parking lots and semi-abandoned parking lots to see some really, really tough-looking RVs where people are now camping out in beaten up RVs, or worse yet, actually just sleeping in cars. This is Rhode Island in the year 2021. But hey, never forget, we've got the fastest growing and improving economy post-COVID of any state in the country. Or actually, my understanding is an interplanetary search was done, and the state of Rhode Island has actually got the best recovering economy, really in the, the metaverse? Is that it? Is that what the Facebook people are calling it? Yes. We're number one in the metaverse, literally with a bullet. utter.
We're number one. I'd like to know what their definition of number one is.
Well, okay, so if you remember back to third grade with long division rules, if you divide 1 by 0, what do you get? Infinity. And beyond. So what do you say to these people? You just shake their head.
I can't. I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can say to someone who can make that argument with a straight face.
No, you can't. You just absolutely can't. So, here we have the, again, the wise men who run Rhode Island somehow thinking policy will keep people warm at night. So
it just shows we need new leadership in Rhode Island.
Right. I mean, some of the lessons learned were today, where when I asked the governor about the dread COVID, and I asked him for specific benchmarks.
The Omicron variant?
Yeah, what is Matty Allen on WPRO AM 630? Watch him from 12 to 3. What does he have to say? What were those toys where you flip-flopped them and they became Chevy cars? Yeah, Transformers. Yeah, the Omicron Transformer. Yeah, that's the ticket. So we learned today that benchmarks, common sense is not a benchmark. We learned today that legislation can actually help keep people warm at night. So if we have enough legislation and plans and bills and allotments and charrettes and conversations and RI 2030s, that'll be enough to keep people warm tonight. I don't usually, can I just say something? I don't usually say this on these airwaves because I have too much respect for my viewers. But fuck them. Fuck them. All right?
Wow.
Fuck them all.
I'm sure that's the sentiment of a lot of people who are, following these issues. It's like, really, please don't insult me to my face like that. It's bottom line insulting. They think there are so many stupid people out there who just don't pick up on this, and we're not stupid. The people are not stupid. Most people can see right through this political BS, and I'm sure a lot of people share those sentiments that you just shared with us so vehemently on the Coalition Radio Network.
The official new logo, the motto, if you will, our new marketing campaign. Fuck them. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, and this is going to be in the back of our minds. My prediction, and I'm already calling it Occupy State House. All right. So they promise that they're going to be there until there's a solution, until the problem's fixed. And after having spent a few hours with them over the last couple of nights, they're not faking it. They're not pulling any punches. So Governor McCheese, in the words of the Almighty, you got a problem. And if I'm you, I'd cut out the crap and just get people inside. And then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think that would be step number one, and then the rest of the details can be figured out at that point.
Right.
It's not an approach I would usually endorse, but when you're talking about people's lives in this type of situation, I think it's one that might be should be at the very top of the list, at least now, until we can figure out a more permanent solution.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of business at hand tonight. There's a lot of loose ends we're going to tie up. I just want to put this out there, by the way. I've had a couple of close encounters through some friends, new and old alike, who have become involved with something called the Public Defender's Office here in Rhode Island. And it's an issue we're going to be tackling on December 15th. That's a Wednesday evening. As part of this show, we're going to be having a special panel conversation and this is going to be fascinating. It's going to be a minute or so of me. Then I'm going to get out, so that means the conversation's automatically upgraded. But we're going to have attorneys Rutherford, Howe, and Calenda talking about the public defender system. Attorney Howe is a congressional candidate, interestingly enough, a libertarian congressional candidate who works, Jonathan works in the, you ready for this, folks? Keyshawn's off site. I'd actually finally use that drum roll effect. He is a public defender in the Bronx County, New York family court system. Allow that yourself to drink that in for a moment.
Yeah,
now, in his spare time,
people knew what the family court system was like in general. I can't even imagine what that one is like.
Right. Mark Rutherford is no stranger to these airwaves. He's we call him our super lawyer. He's a constitutional law, business law expert. He's practiced internationally, is a libertarian of note. And in the past, we've talked about immigration law. We've talked about a whole number of subjects. You've appeared with him before, Chaz. He's quite the voice.
Yes,
it's just the gravity and the intelligence and also the decency with he brings to our show is astonishing. Chaz Calenda, this is going to be, in a sense, your show. You're going to be hosting, per se, but you're going to be participating as well with your 12-plus years experience in the Attorney General's office and, 3 to 4 years experience now
going on 4 now.
Right, in the defense world. You've got a wealth of just feet on the street, boots on the ground experience in dealing with virtually every court situation imaginable. There hasn't been much you haven't seen at some level, is there?
It's true. I mean, other than workers' compensation, which I don't do, but I've pretty much been in every other court in this state in almost every other situation, particularly those that would be relevant to the public defender's office, because I take a lot of cases that are appointed to me by the courts when the public defenders have a conflict of interest. So, right. I operate many of my cases in a similar manner as the public defenders would. Right.
So that's going to be a very special hour that we're going to spend talking about the role of the public defender from 3 geographically diverse perspectives. Mark is based in Indiana. Attorney Jonathan Howe, is based in the Bronx, as we say. Chaz, of course, you're based locally here in Rhode Island. Of interest that I just touched on for a second, but I just want to throw out there, you're running against Peter Neronha to be the Attorney General in New York.
Who?
Who? Yeah. Sarasota Pete Redux.
Are we talking about the right Pete? I haven't seen a Peter recently, so I wasn't sure which one you were referring to.
I saw a stunning likeness in the Garlic Farms section over at Stop and Shop this evening, portrayed on the side of an FDA-approved cardboard-based milk carton. I did see that in square pictures. It had sort of a lineup look to it, but allegedly he is alive and well somewhere. We're not sure. But to me, the fascinating
undisclosed location with Dick Cheney.
Right, in the bunker. Right. Yeah, but he and Dick, I mean, that's a pair. But Jonathan Howe is running against AOC for the United States Congress. And that's going to be a fascinating juxtaposition because you're taking a candidate who is genuinely anti-war, and he's running for Congress. So that's an important issue. He's actually like really not pretends he's against corporate welfare. And he clearly has a perspective on the criminal justice system that no corporatist Democrat, self-loathing perpetrator and perpetuator of our failed criminal justice system could ever appreciate. Because
wow.
All 3 of you, Mark Rutherford, Jonathan Howe, and you, Chaz Calenda, have decades of experience actually practicing law in its most primal level. How's that for analogy?
It's the truth.
So I'm looking forward to that. That, of course, is on December 15th. That's a Wednesday night, normal time, 8:15. Chaz Calenda, attorney at law, panel conversation, the state of public defenders in America today. Now, on to the sort of topical stuff, because tonight's just kind of an overview. What the hell is going on with the United States Congress? And it's beginning to rise to me that famous scene from Injustice for All, And you're out of order, and you're out of order, and you're out of order. The whole damn place is out of order. Can you explain to me what's going on in D.C. with all this congressional subpoena stuff?
I mean, Congress is a mess. I mean, I don't care what side you support. Congress is an absolute mess. And it has just become to the point where they have stopped representing people in any fashion, shape, or form. And it's just simply become a political circus. But we've really hit, I think we've really hit some lunacy here. Everyone, you can have your opinions on what happened on January 6th, and we all do. And I think most people are probably along the same lines of thinking that January 6th should not have happened. But there were certain people that the Select Committee in the House of Representatives, that was composed by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, certain people they wanted to speak to, and they issued subpoenas to those individuals, one of which may be familiar to all our viewers, Steve Bannon, who of Breitbart fame and the Trump presidency. He had been a person of interest that was issued a subpoena by the committee, and he refused to honor that subpoena. Now, a subpoena is simply a court order, essentially a court order, or an order of a body with the authority to issue it, to command your appearance before it to answer questions. It's a lawful order, and if you don't obey it, there are generally legal consequences, and that's what we're seeing right now. Not only with Steve Bannon, I believe Mark Meadows is caught up in this as well, and there may be other individuals who have refused to comply with the subpoenas of the committee. Now, I do think the committee itself. The committee itself has some issues politically. I think there's a lot of grandstanding going on there, and we can have that debate certainly. But they have decided that because of Steve Bannon's failure to cooperate and show up, they have issued him a criminal contempt citation, which has now been referred to the Department of Justice. And within weeks, the Department of Justice indicted Steve Bannon on criminal contempt for failure to show up and cooperate with the Select Committee on the January 6th incident. And now he faces up to a year in federal prison because of that. There are consequences, and there need to be consequences when you don't obey with lawful service like that. But if you look at these things throughout history, Steve Bannon and Mark Meadows have not been the only people who have been held in criminal contempt of Congress. If you look back and no further than, I believe it was 2012, the Attorney General of the United States at the time was held not only in criminal contempt of Congress, he was held in civil contempt of Congress. You know who that Attorney General was? It was Eric Holder. Eric Holder was held in criminal contempt of Congress for the Fast and Furious scandal, where they were running, the U.S. government, the ATF, were running guns across the U.S.-Mexican border, guns that ended up at crime scenes, killing Border Patrol agents and U.S. agents. And the U.S. Congress at that time, the House of Representatives, wanted information that he refused to turn over. He was held in criminal contempt. By federal law, when somebody is held in criminal contempt by Congress, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia has a requirement to seek an indictment of that person through a grand jury and prosecute them. That was not done in the case of Eric Holder. Not only did they not seek an indictment, not only did they not get an indictment, they never sought an indictment because he was the sitting Attorney General, which gives him no special privileges against being indicted. He's not the President of the United States, where the Department of Legal, I believe it was the DOJ Legal Services Office, has issued an opinion saying the President cannot be indicted while in office. The Attorney General has no such protections. So that was a political matter. This looks like it's a political matter, and if you're asking me my opinion. So that's what we're dealing with in Washington, D.C. right now. When we have critical issues going across our country. We've talked about a few here in Rhode Island, but critical issues facing our country, not just on actual infrastructure or the coronavirus or whatever policies that are going on with that. We're more worried about what happened on January 6th at this point, and we're going to prosecute people for that at this point, apparently, which I think we can think of better things to do with the United States Congress than pursue those issues, given the state of our economy, the state of our politics in this country right now. To me, it's a three-ring circus up on Capitol Hill.
Does anybody actually go to jail for this stuff?
Yeah. Well, essentially, yes. I mean, it's not exactly the same charge, but essentially, if I'm not mistaken, it was Roger Stone who was prosecuted for obstructing Congress or lying to Congress, if I'm not mistaken correctly. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there, and this is no political bent to this at all. Congress lies to us every day. Both parties lies to us every day. I haven't seen too many of them go to prison unless they start getting caught up in scandals and stealing from people or, breaking SEC rules, something along those lines. Even that is questionable. But Congress lies to us every day, but people do go to jail for lying to Congress. And Roger Stone, like him or hate him, went to jail. He was pardoned ultimately by President Trump, but he went to jail and he sat in jail while a overtly partisan federal judge kept him there, despite some very strong legal arguments from his defense team.
Wow. What's your prediction? How does this all end up?
It'll go to court. It'll go back and forth. I predict that Steve Bannon will be convicted. The District of Columbia is not known for being sympathetic to right-wing agitators like Steve Bannon. So you go to a jury in the District of Columbia when you're someone like Steve Bannon. I find it hard to believe he's going to get a fair trial on this. But this will be appealed. It'll go all the way up, and then I predict it'll go up to the Supreme Court at some point, and they'll hash it out. Because usually what happens when Congress issues these citations of contempt, they get litigated in court, and then 5-6 years from the date that happens, everybody says, okay, we've all had enough, and it all kind of goes away.
That happens. I'm just going to make a general legal observation. As always, full disclaimer, I have to say this at least every time I'm on the air with you. I am not an expert. I merely play one on the radio and a variety of sources of media. But hey, the beauty about being a quote-unquote journalist here in Rhode Island is that by merely being mediocre with occasional flashes of a slightly above averageness, I'm a freaking superstar. I mean, holy cow. But a lot of cases do that. I mean, there's a huge splash in the news. Papers are served. Press conferences are held. Agitprop is perpetuated and perpetrated. We have great moments of drama on talk radio and in social media, and then fade to black. And then eventually the charges are dropped. Have you seen that happen lately?
I mean, yeah. I mean, and it doesn't always end up in charges. People are bickering back and forth. They got these contempt citations. There's some legal argument that's going on in court, and it takes years and years and years. And eventually the dispute is resolved with really no definitive ruling one way or the other. It's just that it's a war of attrition. Which side's going to back off first, or which side gets to use the leverage, whatever leverage they may have, to extort whatever they want out of the other side. And, that person who gets caught up in the middle of it may or may not skate. I don't think Steve Bannon's going to escape, because you have a overtly political and one-sided Congress and executive branch at this point, which didn't exist when Eric Holder was held in contempt. Mm-hmm. But that is that is something that Steve Bannon will have to deal with because he chose not to obey at this point what looks to be a lawfully issued subpoena. So, but I do see that. I mean, especially on the federal level, it's really done for leverage purposes and to sort of create the impression that here we are fighting for what we believe is to be the righteous position, and really neither side's doing that at this point.
And so effectively our federal court system, and to a certain degree our state and local system, I mean, look at the charges again that were alleged by Peter Neronha against a certain Mr. Brett. They're really just a negotiating tool, aren't they? This is in the grand scheme, they are tools to be wielded politically for your own political purposes. In this case, and I'm no fan of Mr. Bannon by any stretch, but he violated, what's the sacred rule of politics? Don't step on the foot today, right? The ass you'll have to kiss tomorrow. In his case, he became, America's number one wanted by, left of center Democrats. And man, karma's a bitch.
They're running the show right now.
Right.
They're running the show right now. So, that was a dangerous move, if you're asking me.
Give an excuse.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though, when you made the comparison to what Peter Neronha did with the Jeffrey Britt prosecution when that case was literally laughed out of court by the judge who oversaw that case based on no evidence. That was a political prosecution if there ever was one. When you make a pretrial offer to have the guy plead guilty to an overcharged crime of money laundering and offer 18 months in prison for someone who has no criminal record, think about whatever you want. Personally, I don't really care. You're making a pretrial offer to serve 18 months in prison, on up to 20 years in prison if he were to be convicted, and then make him go through that whole process and spend untold amounts of money on his defense, which he should never have had to spend. That is extortion, and the criminal justice system should never have been used in that situation. And if you're going to ask me, that's one of the big reasons I've made this my goal to become the next attorney general, so we don't see things like that being used in our criminal justice system to extort whatever political gain one may believe they may get out of using that system for those purposes.
Let's move on to Rhode Island's one of Rhode Island's sunnier burgs, and of course, I'm talking about the charming little city, the village. It's the town, I believe, of North Kingston, Rhode Island. What's in the water in North Kingstown? Holy shnikes, in the words of the immortal philosopher. What's going? I don't even know where to begin at this point. And again, I get, just full disclosure, I get sarcastic about this. And with really an appalling sense of humor about it, because I have no idea how to cope with this otherwise. So can you bring us up to date on NK?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on who you believe, because there seems to be a whole lot of factual disagreement as to what actually happened. So, I mean, basically, you have a former coach there. His name is Aaron Thomas. He was alleged around 2018 to be engaging in these so-called fat tests of juveniles who were on his student athletes who were on teams through I believe it was North Kingstown High School, if I'm not mistaken. And basically the allegations were he made them strip naked in front of him without any sort of supervision, and somehow made an evaluation of their body fat in that state of undress. Now, the superintendent at the time, and I apologize if I butcher his name, but Phil Auger, depends on how you want to say it. I'll just call him the superintendent for now. Can we
just call him Phil?
Yeah, we'll call him Phil.
Hey, Phil.
No disrespect intended, but he denies knowing that there was any sort of touching, perhaps, that was going on. He denies certain allegations that were made by the student athletes. That is hotly disputed by the athletes' attorneys, which I believe it's, I'm trying to think of his name, is Tim Conlon. Tim Conlon, I believe, is representing some of these student athletes. Says that that the superintendent, Phil, knew very well about the claims that these student athletes made at the time, and did not initiate the proper review and action against him until this all really came to light. And recently,
and could I just jump in there for a second? As far and please, as always, correct me, not if, but when I'm wrong, but whether or not the attacks took place, there was a legal requirement to report that an allegation of an attack was made. Is that correct?
certain individuals, and usually they're within a school or DCYF or social working settings, are required mandatory reporters when they believe that there could be allegations of child abuse, and those mandatory reporters must report that to DCYF. I can't say with 100% certainty that the superintendent would have been a mandatory reporter under the law, but if he was and did not report it to DCYF, and the allegations involved minor students and an adult, and he failed to report that, that is a criminal offense, which has been prosecuted in the past against teachers, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So I don't know where our attorney general is on this. He hasn't said a word on this, not even that. We can't say a word because we're investigating. Do we know if he's investigating, or do we know if he's down in Sarasota with our former attorney general? I don't know. So I mean, this is serious. I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing because the allegations are not serious. I'm laughing because you would think that our chief law enforcement officer would have something to say on this, or bring some sort of matter to a grand jury, bring it to his criminal information charging unit, or make some sort of public statement that, we're taking this seriously and we're going to do something about it, even if North Kingstown's not. Although North Kingstown just hired recently retired Superior Court Judge Susan McGurl to do an independent investigation by a party line vote by the town council, 3-2 to hire her to do the independent investigation, which tells me, in all due respect to Judge McGurl, who I've been in front of many times, all due respect to her, I don't know how independent this is going to be.
What role, and the prevailing colloquialism is keeping in your lane, and that's the new way of saying mind your beeswax. What legal role does a town council? I mean, I'm confused by who's supposed to be performing oversight on whom. This is a school board issue, isn't it?
Sure. The school board it certainly has some responsibility here. They oversee, certain employees in the school department. The town council ultimately takes responsibility for what goes on in the town. So they have a lot to say about this as well. And the town council, I believe, was the one who was the board that authorized an independent investigation by the town to determine whether or not they should take action over the allegations here. But irrespective of that, there is possible criminal implications here, or at very minimum civil implications. And the attorney general has a big role in that. Law enforcement has a big role in that. And the fact that we haven't seen an actual or evidence of an actual investigation going on, trying to look into that, is troubling for me if you're looking at this from a purely objective standpoint.
Interesting. So the judge has been hired, or is that still undergoing the review process?
As far as I can tell, she has been hired by a 3-2 vote by the town council. The 3 Democrats on the council voted to hire her. The 2 Republicans voted not to hire her. They all agree that there should be an investigation. They just did not agree on who should conduct it.
And is this investigation have the force of law behind it, or is this merely fact-finding?
It sounds to me like it's going to be fact-finding. Judge McGurl is not going to be acting in a position as a judge. She has retired from the Rhode Island Superior Court and will be vacating her seat shortly. So this is more of like a fact-finding investigation. She does have a background as the Deputy Attorney General of the state of Rhode Island at one point prior to her becoming a judge. So she does have the investigatory background to do it. Obviously, there was a disagreement among the town council as to her ability to be impartial and do this. So I'm not going to weigh in on my opinion on that because I have too much respect for her as a judge to give my opinion on her abilities to do that. I'd like to see what she comes up with, and then we'll make our opinions known after that comes out. But it's not the force of law in the sense of, the Attorney General looking at something and deciding whether or not criminal charges will be brought or not.
Right. Well, and let's bring this full circle then. I'm going to establish here at least a philosophical connection between our first conversation tonight, or I should say our second, but our first as part of our theme, and that is, of course, federal oversight, federal investigatory processes, federal subpoenas. Does in fact the judge, who in this capacity is operating as a independent investigator, not as a judge, does she have any power to require any of the players involved in this, for lack of a better term, and excuse me for that, but does she have any power then to require them to come and testify in whatever forum they've established she's going to conduct this business in?
I'd have a hard time seeing how she has that authority without getting a court order. And I don't know how she'd get that court order.
Right.
This seems to be like a fact-finding investigation. They're going to do a review. Apparently, they've set a budget of $25,000 to allow that review to happen. And I don't know if she'll get the cooperation that she's probably and hopefully will be looking for. And if people don't cooperate, what is her remedy? Is she going to ask the town council to authorize their lawyers to file some sort of civil action? Is the Attorney General going to get involved? Are the North Kingstown Police going to get involved? Are the state police going to get involved? I don't know. It seems to me more of going through the motions, more CYA, perhaps from the school to see what we can find out now 3, maybe almost 4 years later, and make our report known, and then we'll bring it to the quote-unquote proper authorities to let them decide what they're going to do with it.
But in a very real sense, and this is, a politician or a way of looking at it, would someone independent of the legal process look at this entire proceeding and say, this is nothing more than what should be, you should be staying in your lane instead of engaging in a virtue signaling fishing expedition?
It's certainly an opinion that's valid. I'm not saying.
How do you get, and this is where I've tried to get into the heads, if you will, of how town solicitors think. How does a town solicitor get on board with spending taxpayer money on a process that might have moral authority, because I think everyone wants to understand the facts involved, but has no real legal authority upon which to demand the information that is surely not going to be volunteered, when in fact the principal subject of this investigation is facing criminal charges at the same time? Why in the name of God would they ever cooperate with these people unless they had literally evidence that would support them in being not guilty?
Well, a town solicitor can only provide legal advice to the town, so the town has to authorize any actions. The town may feel like they may have some liability if they don't do this. And, whether or not other, people of interest in this investigation are going to cooperate, maybe that will push our, sort of missing in action Attorney General into taking some sort of action if he sees a report where the people of interest don't seem to have any interest in cooperating.
Wow. This is descended into pure chaos at this point. And when you get, you have to wonder, if you take this, extrapolate this out 3 or 4 or 5 steps, is it possible, because remember, we're talking about the law, not the politics. Is it possible that this individual, this coach, can get a fair trial in the state of Rhode Island at this point?
I'd like to think he can. Not that I'm defending him, but if this is true, but we don't know. We don't know the facts yet, and I'd want to know the facts, but I'd like to think he can get a fair trial. I think he would, if these events happened in North Kingstown, and he were charged with certain felonies, he'd be in front of a very fair judge in the Superior Court, and I think he would get a fair trial.
But I should probably qualify this. If in fact it were to be a jury trial, is it possible to get a jury at this point who hasn't been thoroughly prejudiced? And this has nothing to do with guilt, by the way, because I know that there is a group of folks ready to literally crucify this gentleman. And what he's accused of is horrific. And the fact that the system somehow allowed these alleged actions to take place over the alleged period of time and discussion is horrific. And if he's guilty, there's, lock him up, because you know what? It's what he did is grotesque on so many levels that we can't even qualify it. But what we're looking at right now is not defending the individual. What we're looking at is the process. And I'm just wondering if you can get a fair jury after this has been adjudicated at virtually every level of town government extensively.
It's going to be a difficult challenge, and that's where you have a defense attorney, a very good defense attorney, who's got to do a very good job voir direing the jury. And that just simply means, you get your chance in Rhode Island when you have a jury trial to question jurors and try to get at any biases, motives, any reason for being on that jury that would make them, somehow partial or unable to render a fair verdict. And certainly, there are going to be people who hear about this, but there is, there's been very few times I've seen in the state of Rhode Island, at least, a jury that was unable to be selected, that was unable to be completely detached, not completely, but at least fair enough detached from the situation to weigh the law and to weigh the facts, abide by the law as it's given to them by the judge, and render a verdict. We're going to have to keep an eye on that one, because I'm a firm believer in process, just like you are. We need to have a fair system in order to have people have faith in our system, in order to make sure our criminal justice system is the best system in the world, and one that does justice for everybody involved, including those accused of horrible crimes. Right.
If in fact those accused of horrible crimes aren't actually the litmus test for a fair system. Because just like horrific speech is the real litmus test to see if in fact freedom of the speech exists. It's sad that it has to get to this point, but what do we always say? In the halls of justice, where do we find justice often?
In the halls.
You think we should do a T-shirt on that? I don't know.
I think so. You got some witty ones up there. I like them.
I don't know. We'll talk about that off air. Maybe a Chaz Calenda attorney at law T-shirt is in order at some point. Although I don't know if you want to be. We have a great deal of fun in the air, but I don't know if you want to be associated with me in my sense of humor professionally. You're held in very high esteem here in the community, and we need to keep it that way. It all comes back now, of course, to speaking of legal traditions and speaking of legacies and speaking of clear visions. This year's Tampa Pete. Oh, wait, what city? Where is Kilmartin alleged to have? Sarasota Pete. So this year's Sarasota Pete goes, in fact, if proven to be true, goes, in fact, to not only our own Sarasota Pete Neronha, who we have yet to find the bunker in Sarasota or whichever Florida city he's going to be retiring to in November. That was a joke. Yeah.
Truth.
Truth. Truth, man. But if I can paraphrase a children's video game that was popular on the web a few years in the back, where in the world is Pete Neronha?
That's a good question because, he only seems to come out when a political issue that he thinks he can capitalize on hits the news waves. And then he goes on with his friendly interviews, sitting back and acting like the nice guy. When really, in fact, and I think you saw this firsthand, Pat, when he's actually given a tough question, he gets very defensive and puts his back up, does not like to be questioned and does not like to have to give answers to questions that are something a little tougher than, so what are you going to do this weekend, Mr. Attorney General?
Yeah, you've got chaos throughout the land right now on multiple levels of issues, countless issues surrounding the pandemic, countless issues surrounding what's happening in a variety of our school systems and a variety of levels, from everything from allegations of sexual abuse to improper firings to mandates that were invented to the masking to it's the firing of firing of medical workers, emergency orders that seem to continue endlessly. I asked the governor about that this morning, and I just said, give me a set of benchmarks. And his basic response was when it feels good. And when it makes sense.
That's always a great one. That's always a great one because you can go back on that one anytime you want. It's still not feeling right. We're going to wait off. We're going to hold off on this one.
Well, what seems to have caused a bit of agita, if you want, on the governor's behalf is when I remarked that, in fact, common sense is not a benchmark. At this point, Rhode Islanders want a benchmark, and in the comment of the day that hasn't been given much play, it is the governor of Rhode Island currently alleges that the privations of both civil liberty and civil rights engendered by his executive orders aren't as bad as most states. Huh?
Oh, so I'm only a little bad. Now I'm not totally bad. Is that what his response was?
Yeah, and I don't know that many states left that have this type of sway. I mean, most states by now, the General Assembly has reported back to duty in the fullest sense because that's what they were elected and worked really hard to do and spent a lot of time with people they don't like in order to get into the position where they can make decisions. I still find astonishing that we live in a state which is allegedly the second weakest governor constitutionally in the nation, second only to the state of Texas, with a 6 or 7 decades of outrageous power grabs by General Assembly leaders, that all of a sudden the General Assembly ain't so interested in being the General Assembly. And shouldn't, I don't know, the people's attorney, let's bring it full cycle, shouldn't Mr. Neronha, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Sarasota Pete. Sorry, can we make a motion from Your Honor that, in fact, going forward, as of December 1st, in the year of the Lord 2021, that we've effectively, on this show forever, changed the name Pete Neronha to Sarasota Pete.
Well,
so
Mr.
resolved.
Martin may take issue with that. I just like to call him No Show Neronha because he's
No Show Neronha. I think they have a process in today's American digital culture where you put like little squares, squares in front of them. I think they call it a hashtag. And then after that, you put something witty. And then that brings together all sorts of posts. So, failing to accede to the first proclamation, do we in fact rule that forevermore on the airwaves of the Coalition Radio Network, it is now the Attorney General of the great state of Rhode Island and formerly of Providence Plantations will be referred to, in fact, as No Show Neronha.
I think that we can. I think we can pass that proclamation.
Is that duly written, duly noted, and duly exercised under power of the People's Court of the Coalition Radio Network?
I would recognize. I would recognize the motion. I believe it would pass.
All right. So let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Never think that the Coalition Radio Network is a democracy. It is a dictatorship, and not a gentle one at that. So let me consult with station management for just a moment. Station management, what say you? Yeah. All right, station management says okay. So No Show Neronha, it shall be now and forevermore again, December 1st, 2021, year of our Lord. See, we made some progress tonight. And that, by the way, that's, by the way, I want to use the most important word of the evening of this week. We have decided that is, in fact, a policy, isn't it?
It sounds that way. It sounds that way from station management, that this is a policy.
And we know how important, and we know the regard and how we revere policies here, don't we?
We do. We do. We take them. We take them very seriously, because then we can have another policy after that.
There you go. No Show Neronha, it is. Wow, this was going to be a 20-minute. By the way, this was going to be a 20-minute conversation.
Well, it could have been, but the problem is we have too many issues facing us here. And I say No Show Neronha, and I'm joking around, but he's a no-show for the people of Rhode Island. He's a no-show for all of us. He's a rubber stamp for the governor. He's a rubber stamp for the essentially the executive branch and the executive power of the state of Rhode Island, when he really should be the people's lawyer, because he doesn't report to the governor. He doesn't report to anybody else. He's independently constitutionally elected. And if he was doing his job, he'd be out there fighting for each and every one of you who has this question about these mandates, who has these questions about the firings. Is this legal? Are all these questions that we've just talked about for the last hour or so? He'd be out there at the forefront. Instead, he, or his office, I should say, because he's not doing anything. His office is out there in court fighting against the people of Rhode Island, fighting against them in every way, shape, or form to make sure that A, they don't get information that they're looking for, B, that they are not people are not getting the judicial relief that they're seeking. So, and C, that he's simply out there being the governor's muscle, as far as his legal muscle is concerned. So, I mean, to me, that's not the role of the Attorney General. Yes, there are always going to be times. There are always going to be times where the Attorney General has to fight for the government. Because there's always going to be people suing the government. There's always going to be people bringing claims against the government. And yes, that is part of the role for the Attorney General. But his role, especially in a state like Rhode Island, where you're not appointed, you don't serve at the pleasure of another official, you're an independently elected constitutional officer, you have a legal and moral obligation to make sure that you are enforcing only laws and only policies, there's that word again, only policies that are consistent with our law and our Constitution. And so far, he has done none of that. And that is why I think I will be a better choice for Rhode Islanders to be the next Attorney General in 2022, because I will be the people's lawyer, making sure that everyone's rights are being respected, everybody's ability to be heard and have their concerns heard will have a fair day while I'm the Attorney General.
Bring us home, Chaz Calenda, attorney at law. Well,
Chaz Calenda, attorney at law here. We're at the end of another episode, but we will be back, as you talked about. On the 15th, we will certainly be back talking about the role of the public defenders. I'm looking forward to that. But I also wanted to bring to everybody's attention, in case you haven't...
We're doing some stuff remotely tonight, folks. We're experimenting. Sadly, Chaz is the guinea pig. And so that was the music from our foreign policy show, which is set in the Middle East. You may have picked up on that. And so,
well, it was good music, but I was just about to say, as far as for those of you who haven't seen, I am running for Attorney General for 2022. We talked about it a little tonight, but on December 16th, I will be having an event at the Brood Awakenings in Warwick, Rhode Island, 1316 Bald Hill Road. It'll be from 6 to 8 o'clock. I invite everybody. I invite everybody who's interested in my vision of what the Attorney General's office will be like if I am elected to be your next Attorney General in 2022. I invite you all to come and meet me, have a conversation with me. Patronize the establishment, their Brood Awakenings. They have excellent food and coffee, amongst other things. And enjoy yourself and have a good night. And we'll talk about why I am a better choice for the state of Rhode Island than Peter Neronha. And you can also get in touch with me at the law firm of Inman and Torgy, where I currently practice law. That's at 1500 Nooseneck Hill Road in Coventry, 401-823-9200. As you know, I practice in the areas of criminal defense, constitutional law, civil litigation, and occasionally, if you push me hard enough, I'll even go into family court. It is one of those situations where I've seen pretty much all here in the state of Rhode Island, and I'm here to help in any way I can for those of you who find yourself in the legal system, and I do so generally on a daily basis, and I'm happy to do so going forward. But Pat, I appreciate you as always being involved in our conversation here tonight. We had a lot of fun, but we also talked about a lot of serious issues that really do need addressing going forward. And I look forward to addressing those issues on future episodes here of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law.